All right, so we should be on YouTube now. Yay, we are up and on YouTube. And again, good morning. And make sure I'm being heard on.
The content of this meeting being sent to a third party.
That's right. Everybody should be on YouTube now. Yay. And they are having a party.
Okie dokie.
They're having the third party of the day. All right. So there we are.
I
Yes.
can hear the glasses clinking somewhere.
Ding, ding. Yep, exactly. So I have us on. It's actually 73% through the book. And we get it
Okay.
up on the screen. And I always, I love, like we might even get done with this book this year.
I think we probably will
Probably
actually at this
will,
point.
yeah. And
Yeah, I think so.
so we're thinking about,
Maybe even by about the time we started 2 years ago.
yep, and maybe then we'll have another
Next
book,
summer. Yeah.
some other book that
I've got a handful in mind, but we can talk about that later. You probably have a handful of mine too.
I don't know. We're reading so many books in Gather now that
Yeah.
we're reading Forgiveness in Jesus. We're reading uh, Remember Not to, or don't for, never forget to laugh, which is
Uh-huh.
the
That's a great
Bill
one.
Thetford
Mm-hmm.
biography.
Uh-huh.
I guess Carol Howe, Alan Ishak now is doing a biography of Carol Howe.
Oh, cool.
So that'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so One Saving Grace, is that where you were?
I have us on from 2 weeks ago, and so loving both Helen and Bill,
Okay,
like
here
good
we
to
are.
accept. Oh, there it
Ah,
is. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
okay,
Okay. Same
all
place.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
Very
Just the
good.
other side of the
Very
column.
good. So do you want to read a bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
And so loving both Helen and Bill, I grew to accept the unhealed nature of their relationship. My attempts to help them shift along the lines set forth in A Course in Miracles, given, after all, to help induce such a shift, involved into gentle evolved into gentle reminders. While my personal preference would clearly have been for them to have forgiven each other on in the world of form, on a deeper level, their apparent lack of forgiveness became irrelevant to the healing that had already occurred in the instant they joined together in June 1965. I'm just going to stop there and comment on that first paragraph because that's really potent. I think so much of the course really asks us to look through appearances and beyond appearances and behavior and what seems to be the circumstances of our world and certainly our ego interpretation of things, um, to see kind of like with X-ray or laser vision through the facade of form, nothing so blinding as perception of form, and see the truth in everyone we meet or think about, as Jesus or Holy Spirit would see each seeming other, and seeing the innocence in them. It resonates with the innocence, the eternal innocence in us, which we all have and share. And then that really is what it's undoing the belief in separation on a very, step by step basis until we can disregard that silliness altogether. And so, the apparent lack of forgiveness, that's interesting. That's a phrase that kind of grabbed me. Irrelevant to the healing, because the healing really is, I need to heal my mind. And, the Course reminds us that our sole responsibility is to accept the atonement for ourselves. Well, if I'm reading the Course is for my decision-making mind to look at the insanity of the ego with Holy Spirit, see that it has never worked, and slowly but surely transform my habit of choosing the ego consistently to the habit of choosing the Holy Spirit consistently. And then um, that atonement process, that forgiveness classroom, will be completed, and we'll go home. Well, I'll go home. What the person that I think is me will actually dissolve into the oneness that's always been, that we all share, and I'll realize that everyone else has already always been home. and I'm the only one playing hooky. That's kind of how I like to think of it. Is I don't need to worry about anyone else's spiritual path or progress,
It's already
or
done.
or even my own for that matter. Really, I just have to do the next forgiveness classroom assignment that's in front of me, which is whatever seems to be pushing my buttons on any given moment. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yep.
And Ken didn't have to worry about, how's this going to move forward, and if other people are going to get it, or
Right,
if
right.
Helen and Bill are actually going to get it. It doesn't really matter. It
Yeah, and
was
he
already
expressed
done.
that very explicitly in that paragraph, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he did.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So, one saving grace of this entire period, incidentally, was the keen sense of humor that the three of us shared. Despite the ongoing and underlying tension, we laughed a lot. Our laughter was often able to express the ultimate purpose of our being together, a love often belied by the interpersonal squabbles. Looking back on this time, it is clear that there was never any question in any of our minds of the rightness of our having joined together. This recognition always allowed Helen and Bill to go beyond the unforgiveness to the love, and commitment was the true bonding of the relationship. And it was this commitment and fidelity that made their relationship truly holy. I return. Well, I'm just going to pause there since it kind of begins the next section. But yeah, I think that now that second paragraph really demonstrates that it wasn't just an intellectual thing, that it really reflected in the practice that Ken had, that obviously Bill and Helen shared significantly in, of seeing the humor in their belief in separation. And so, despite the insanity of the ego thought system that they were all working to undo, they all recognized in themselves and in each other the sanity of the Holy Spirit. And that humor is a wonderful indicator of that. That the real genuine um, levity that comes from not taking the ego seriously, the tiny mad idea.
yeah, exactly. And look through the course and see how many times the Jesus tells us laughter is the cure.
Mm-hmm.
Into eternity where all was one, there crept a tiny mad idea of which the Son of God remembered not to laugh.
Yep. Yep.
And that's it. And then how many times it says, in your gentle laughter it is healed. Stay with the Holy Spirit until you can laugh about this. Laughter is the key to healing of this apparent, broken mind.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because if we can remember to laugh about it, then it's over, it's done. So very definitely, it's, to hear that they laughed a lot together meant that there was a lot of healing that was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I think is just such a you can't force the laughter, but when you allow it, and I think there's a lot of humor in the course. Well, you and I were both in Estes Park, what, about a dozen years ago now, something like that.
Been a while, yeah.
And at a weekend of freedom retreat where I remember having really a lot of fun putting together a 75-minute talk on the humor in the course, and the basis for that was all the little smiley faces that I described in the margins of the copy of the course I had maybe three copies ago. I guess I've gone through quite a few. Um, and I just assembled those into a little keynote presentation, and I realized, well, there's the humor in the course is profound, because especially when you read it out loud and in a group, I think it's really obvious that the profound sense of humor that Jesus has, and he lampoons and pokes fun of in the most gentle, kind-hearted way, not to damage our decision-making capability, but just to see that it's just a silly mistake that we have this switch that we made up, and we left it in the ego position and forgot about it, and he's gently directing our mind back to the Holy Spirit, where we can see with humility and humor, the absurdity of what we made, and how seemingly terrifying and horrific it is, from perspective of this little, frightened child archetype that we've identified with that isn't real. and yet our real identity in perfect oneness as a shared uh, identity that we can't even really grok, um, is waiting patiently for us to resume uh, our full awareness as decision makers of that identity, so that we can see the humor and just gently release everything that the ego made in a split mind, and everything that it's doing 24/7 to project out the unconscious unfounded guilt onto a meaningless world that only has meaning when we use it to forgive, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you want to
Okay.
start in about Judy?
Okay. Yeah. So, and you have met and knew Judy
I
just
did,
so
yeah, yeah, and I was very fortunate to have met her on a handful of occasions while I was rebuilding the FIP websites, starting about a decade ago. It's amazing how time flies. It's like,
I
wow,
know it.
it's been 5 or 6 years, I think, since I worked on it, something like that. But yeah, it was a fun project. I thought, well, maybe it'll take a year because they had quite an ambitious. It was like 3 or 4 years of meticulously going over all, just with a fine tooth comb, all the things that they wanted it to do, and it was a lot of fun. I was just kind of astonished that how, and it was obviously a very collaborative effort. I was really just more the one of the implementers, Felix Alcala, who did a huge amount of behind the scenes stuff in terms of the uh, the programming for some of the plugins and the special plugins and functionality that went into it, including the ticker tape that had today's workbook lesson. Um, and the little backstory, I think, that I've probably already shared before a few times, but it's just a fun one, is um, Tam Morgan, Judy's daughter, when we'd meet, would say, there's got to be a ticker tape that scrolls across with some kind of course quotes or something. And I started looking at the back end and Google Analytics, and saw what people were looking at, and it's like, oh my gosh, almost like 98, 99% of the traffic was today's workbook lesson. So it's like light bulb, duh moment. What should be in the ticker tape? Oh, today's workbook lesson. And then I didn't have to argue for that. I think everybody realized, oh, that's the perfect thing to put there. So anyway, but and then um, I when we put in a page to describe how to use it, I put a little alliterative phrase in there that no one has touched. It the last time I checked, a week or three ago. It's still there. It's tap the ticker tape text to take today's tutorial. If you go to that
It's
page
hilarious.
on the introduction to the workbook on how to use the workbook. Anyway, so
I love it.
yeah, it really should have been workbook, but I thought tutorial was close enough. Yeah.
I like tutorial and of course it's alliterative. So,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
it's
Perfect
great.
alliteration. Every single word has starts with a T. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's I love
Anyway,
it.
so
Okay.
meanwhile,
All right.
back at Judy.
Okay, I return our narrative now to where we left it at the spring of 1975 when we met Judith Scutch. Okay, and this section is called Judith Scutch and the Post-Publication Years. As Helen and Bill's relationship continued to worsen, the hopes we had once shared of one day living and teaching the course together withered. Since the life of the course for Helen and Bill was so inextricably intertwined with their own relationship, their joining was, after all, its birthplace. It stood to reason that their deteriorating relationship would adversely affect their relationship with the course, to which, almost paradoxically, they were both faithfully dedicated. It was therefore obvious that our collaborating in the future as teachers would not be possible. And while we did not know what the future held, we certainly recognized that it did not hold the three of us together. And then we met Judith Scutch. In many ways, with the arrival of Judy, the situation improved, at least externally. This was similar in one respect to my entry in the scene 2 years earlier, which had taken some of the pressure off the intensity of Helen and Bill's special relationship. Judy provided a clear external focus that served a needed distraction from the internal tensions and frustrations. For example, we regularly met 2 or 3 afternoons a week at Judy's apartment, and at Judy's request, we did the workbook together for a year. The third time around for Helen and Bill. And again, so many people say, well, Helen didn't even do the course. Well, she did the workbook several times. And of all people, she knew what that this course said.
Well, that's what, yeah, Ken, I was just going to say, Ken emphasized that many times is, Helen, in a sense, didn't need to do the course in terms of like her priestess archetype, if you will, or her inner being. I mean, it came through her, so she knew everything that it said and what it meant. It wasn't like it was she had to, scratch her head and figure, well, what does that mean? No, she knew what it meant. And I think the pivotal, maybe it's not quite the right word, but the quintessential um, a lot, dialogue between Helen and Judy in terms of Helen's ambivalence to the course was she said at one point with Judy present says, "I know it," meaning the course, "is true. I just don't believe it." And Judy's response, almost like apparently just almost immediately it was, "Well, Helen, don't you mean I know it's true? I just won't believe it?" And that's I think such a great reminder as you and I have been saying to each other since we started rereading this book, Absence from Felicity, is like, well, this is such a great story of everyone's resistance, not just Helen's, and how we overcome that resistance. We overcome the obstacles to peace, which is synchronistically what I'm going to be sharing in about, let's see, a little less than 40 minutes from at
Oh,
this
okay.
School for A Course in Miracles. Tim Wise asked me to fill in for him this morning, so I'm going to be doing a session for their immersion program. So
Very good.
and so
So
I'll
you're
need to
gonna
leave a few minutes early for that.
leave a
So
few minutes early. That's
yeah,
fine. Yeah.
yeah. So
So,
yeah,
and believe me, yeah, remember we read that whole book.
yes.
Uh,
Yes, that was. I mean, I really savored that. And that was the second time through, I think, for both of us too, for the journey home. At least it was for me anyway. And it's amazing how when you read it again, a second or third time, how much deeper it becomes. And I think that's one of Ken's magna cum laude, books, along with all the three journey series, the journey through the text workbook and manual
yeah,
books. But the
yeah,
journey home, I think fits right up there with his best work, but all of it's really good. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All of it is a wonder. It's a
Even Love Does Not Condemn, even though it's very scholarly and the first two-thirds, three-quarters of it is really mostly about the things that antecedents to the course in terms of Platonism, Gnosticism, Christianity, and all the things that kind of fed into it and had little parts of it, put together. Um, but the last part of that actually I think might be a really excellent book to read next is one candidate when we're done with this book. I don't know if you have that book or not, but it's really quite amazing. Um, and that the last part I think is very, very readable even for people who aren't, religious historians. So
oh
just
yeah, that sounds great.
something to
Yeah,
consider. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I don't know of any other groups that have read it aloud and talked about it actually.
Well, then that might be a good one for us for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I can easily get the book. That's the one thing that's so beautiful about this. It's so easy to get these things and
yeah, yeah.
to you can go through the foundation or you can go to Amazon. But it's the ease of this is amazing to me. So let me continue reading.
Sure, sure.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the last paragraph. Okay. For example, we met regularly 2 or 3 afternoons a week at Judy's apartment, and at Judy's request, we did the workbook together for a year. The third time around for Helen and Bill, and most certainly Judy provided the direct stimulus for bringing Helen and Bill out of the closet, as it were. Judy's infectious enthusiasm for the course and her large number of friends in the New Age community, and in parens, Ken says, Bill once jokingly remarked that we were about to attend a gathering to meet 5,000 of Judy's closest friends.
Uh-huh.
Led Helen and Bill to consent to meet with groups of people to tell their story and present the course. However, at first these meetings were not going to be held in New York, but 3,000 miles away in California. Within a month or two of our initial meeting, Judy arranged for us, Louis included, of course, to spend a month in the Bay Area of San Francisco, Judy's second home at that time and now her permanent residence. There we met large numbers of very interested people who seemed at times, however, more interested in the core story of the course's scribing than in the material itself. This fascination with this ostensible psychic elements to the story eventually paled, and many of these same people lost interest in the course itself after a while, especially after recognizing what it truly said.
Hmm. Yeah, and Ken has emphasized that in a number of places that, if people really knew what the course said, the millions of copies around the world, you know, it would be a much smaller fraction of people who continue on after they discover what it really says, because it's pretty challenging stuff.
Yeah, and
It's
I
only
mean
only
that's
because only because we've so thorough almost completely identified with ego, and that's why, the course meets us right there where we're, you know, just in part of the darkest places of our mind, which is believing in separation and victimization and all the constant mechanisms of projection that are the obstacles to peace, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And man, I'll tell you, it has really been hitting me lately how those obstacles to peace really, really, really work.
Hmm.
I see it in my own mind so clearly. So, and I'm so grateful for the time that I spent with you reading The Journey Home
Oh,
because,
me too. That was excellent. Yeah.
yeah, it was like being psychoanalyzed.
Hmm.
Uh, really looking at your own thinking. I don't know who it was who said maybe it was Ken, maybe who wants to read a book that tells you you don't exist? Lots of people
Uh-huh.
buy the course, but if they recognize that it was actually telling them you don't even exist here, and this is not your real life, and this is not the real world, and you have to come back home, and the way that you do it is by forgiving the world. And we have a group on Thursday evening right now. We're going through the pamphlet, The Song of Prayer, and we're in the section called Forgiveness to Destroy. And it's so very, very clear that what we use the concept of forgiveness for is not to show me the truth about my own mind, but actually to condemn or backstab or whatever uh, our brothers, and that's not what it's for. And
Hmm.
so there's just so much that has changed through the changing dialogue of this course. Now, how it actually removes those obstacles, but first recognizing those obstacles. I would definitely say, oh, I'm not attracted to death. I'm not attracted.
To
I'm not
guilt,
attracted to guilt.
to pain.
I'm, I'm not attracted to those things.
What?
But boy, don't let me miss watching Law and Order, because you know there I get to see it all.
The, the, the laws of chaos and disorder.
Yep, exactly. The laws of chaos and disorder. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Uh,
So let's see. Yeah, so he said many of the people lost interest in the course itself after a while,
Hmm.
especially after recognizing what it truly said.
Yeah.
The course's profound metaphysical foundations. There is no world. This is a central thought the course attempts to teach. Workbook lesson 132, which is Dove's uh, birthday lesson,
Oh, cool.
and spiritual commitment. To learn this course requires willingness to question every
Yeah.
value that you hold.
Not
Uh,
97% or
yeah,
99.5, but every, right?
everything, everything. Uh, uh, those are certainly a far cry from the more worldly emphasis and less demanding nature of many contemporary New Age approaches.
Yeah. And another
Several
thing that I
meetings.
think, oh,
Yeah,
I was
go
just going to
ahead.
say, another thing that ties into what Ken was just saying here is that, it's a pure non-dual course. And I was just listening to Ken's duality as metaphor audio the last few days, and again, and it's an excellent one if you haven't heard that one, or he probably has a book. I listen to a lot of them while I'm out walking, and he just reminds everyone, it's like, well, the course really is, even though it uses dualistic language, because it has to meet us where we're at, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to, you know, plumb its
The
depths.
language.
Our language is intrinsically dualistic, but and it uses metaphors like, God misses us and weeps for us and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, it's meeting us where we're at, but it's the form is dualistic, but the content is strictly non-dualistic. And I think that's important to remember as we're reading it, that there's nothing up that really at all it endorses duality in the course. It basically every sentence in the course tries to steer us away from the masochism of a dualistic thought system that the ego represents.
Yeah, yeah, and we if we had our wits about us, once we looked at that, we would, more than likely run away. Actually, which is what he's saying here.
Yeah. Well, and I think we do that virtually too sometimes, and by zoning out or nodding off. I mean, I've done that countless times, listening to Ken or reading stuff or just reading the course itself. It's like, you in a group or on your own, can read something, and then 30 seconds later, it's like, having had these little mini epiphanies, and then, well, where did that go? I just thought I think I got that a few seconds ago, and then, a minute later, I'm arguing with someone or being upset by something I see in the news or whatever, if I can kind of extend that mindfulness a little bit more each time, to where I could see peace instead of this, and I'm not upset for the reason I think, you know I can, and everyone can begin to make that more of a habit, to stitch those little pearls of enlightenment together, little gems of holy instance, and into a much less sparse necklace of light, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Stitch it to a cozy quilt.
Yeah, yeah.
Wrap yourself around it.
Whatever,
Uh,
whatever thing, the metaphor to embrace your mind with truth and comfort, of
exactly.
the true comfort that doesn't change. Yeah.
All right. So he's talking about visiting with Judy in California, in the San Francisco area,
Hmm.
and having these meetings.
Yep.
And he says several meetings with us arranged throughout our stay. My role in what we jokingly refer to as our vaudeville routine of presenting the course seemed to be to say, after Helen and Bill had completed their stories and descriptions of the course's scribing, you should all know that the inner voice that has been referred to is that of Jesus. It was very difficult, if not almost impossible, for either Helen or Bill to mention the obvious in terms of Jesus and his role with the course. We repeated the California trip the following year again for a month. And again, I just want to say that, there are people who just will, fight to the bitter end saying Ken did not acknowledge Jesus. Ken did not
Huh?
believe it was. I mean, I've heard that
Huh?
so many times
Really?
from. Yeah. Oh
Well, why,
gosh, yeah.
why would he, one of his first books was Forgiveness in Jesus. I don't get that.
I know it. And we have a group reading that on Friday mornings, Forgiveness of
Oh my
Jesus,
gosh.
because there people uh that want to, take Ken out of the picture, and also other that particular edition of a course, because they have their own edition of the course, and in their own edition of the course they see it that Ken screwed up the course by editing everything out of it, and making sure that we didn't know about Jesus. And so it's just convoluted, but there we go.
Yeah. Well, I think to not single out any person or group of people, I think every ego tries to rewrite the course, or to
Yeah,
deny it, or to discount it, or to in another way, in one way or another, obfuscate or evade the message, because and we all have different mechanisms for doing that. And so being patient and gentle with ourselves would automatically reflect in being patient and gentle with everyone else, regardless of the mechanism. I mean, probably most of the, what was it, 14.2 billion people or whatever on the planet, you know, probably have never heard of the course. So, we could say, well, they're resisting the course too. Well, yeah, but so is everyone. I mean, and I think that's why Ken, often in a very non mean-spirited way, would, he said, if you the worst person to be, the most challenging person to be married to, or would be a course student who is also a psychotherapist. So he would jokingly say that. But the idea being is, like, we need to practice it, and to practice it, we can't leave anybody out of what we started off the hour with, of talking about how we need to see everyone as being already complete and healed and whole and innocent. And that's the end of the process of in the obstacles for of to peace. The lifting of the veil section talks about how we need to see everyone as as our ideal long lost best friend, our a reflection of our appointed friend, the center of the storm, the the calm within. And even if that's not reflecting physically at any given moment, we need Holy Spirit's help to see that, because on our own, listening to egos, faulty counsel, we're going to assume that what's expressed in terms of behavior is what the truth is. Well, if there is no world, then we can't really go by what we see with our senses, can we? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was looking in the chat. Dove has posted one of those things that Jesus is laughing. He says, "You are still convinced that your
Oh,
understanding
I love
is a
that one.
powerful contribution to the truth
Yep.
and makes it what it is."
Yep. Yep. Yep.
That's Jesus saying, "You."
Yeah. And we've emphasized that you need nothing. Thanks, Dove. Yeah, that's yeah. Well, when we've all got it from the course, and basically that's really, the course is just a reflection of the right mind that we all share, isn't it? I mean, because if we think that there's any kind of specialness to anything, including the course, because it's just one of countless non-dual teachings through, you know, the history of this particular planet, of which we know just a smidgen, or think we know. And so, I think we can just afford to be really grateful that we have things like the course that present a very clear and undiluted uh, mechanism for getting back to our right minds, huh? Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
absolutely. Uh,
And we have each other to help become the reflections, and everything, when we're expressing love, that's the appropriate response is love, and when we're not, the appropriate response is still love. And in those cases, the latter cases, which I think are probably still pretty abundant for most of us, it's like, well, there's my opportunity to see I'm still projecting. I still need to choose the Holy Spirit more consistently in order to see my kinfolk, my siblings, in the proper light, instead of the ego's darkness.
exactly.
without denying our physical experience and what seems to be happening
yeah,
on the level form, right?
but just remember the actual truth about ourselves, what we are.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's really, the whole point is remembering I'm the light of the world,
yep.
and forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. That's the truth.
Hmm.
Those are truths that are very well expressed, and if understood, give me complete guidance to what to say, what to do, where to go, everything. So just
What to
referring
do
to
with our
David,
mind in every situation, huh?
what to do with our mind in every situation. Exactly, exactly. So let's see. Do you want to read on a little bit, and then
Sure, sure. While Helen seemed to enjoy the change of pace that Judy provided from her relatively insulated New York life, the anxiety surrounding her role with the course continued to increase. Helen and Bill, incidentally, did not believe that they should have any official part in the course's public life. Before meeting us, Judy and her then husband Robert had established the Foundation for Parasensory Investigation, which then, of course, then became the Foundation for Inner Peace, whose purpose was to investigate and provide funding for research in paranormal phenomena, healing, etc. The foundation remained intact as a legal entity. Oh, here it is. But its name was changed to the Foundation for Inner Peace, the present owner of the course's copyright. Judy retained her position as president and Bob his position as vice president, with Helen, Bill, and I being informal consultants. I later became the third member, along with Judy and Bob, of the board of directors. Judy began by deferring decisions to Helen and Bill, but as they gradually pulled away from responsibility from the course's public life, Judy filled in the vacuum. And in time, Helen especially became quite uninterested with what the world was doing, in parentheses, or not doing, close parentheses, with the three books. And that was before the two supplements were written. Yeah. In the summer of 1977, we remained in New York, but in the early fall, Judy arranged for us to travel to London for 2 weeks to meet people interested in the course. The trip was not a happy one, to say the very least, but certainly not from the point of view of Helen's situation. Despite being an Anglophile since childhood, Helen never really wanted to go. Interesting. Um, Judy was insistent, and as it did seem, and it and as it did seem as if we had nothing to lose, the situation in New York was certainly not improving. Off we went. Helen's usual anxieties about traveling were especially heightened, and these did not abate once we landed. Helen, Louie, and I stayed in a hotel in the heart of the city, and Bill and Judy stayed in a house that belonged to one of Judy's friends. Judy and Bill did most of the meeting with people, while my assignment was pretty much to remain with Helen and Louie. Louis, for whom London was his second favorite city, New York, of course, was first, thoroughly enjoyed himself, often happily going off alone. Helen and I, meanwhile, did our usual things together: shop, walk, and go to church. We usually, however, got together with Bill and Judy at some point later in the afternoon. To break things up, we all spent a day together touring the lovely English countryside, and another visiting Ina Twigg, a venerable member of the British psychic establishment. It was very clear, however, that Helen did not wish to meet with people to discuss the course, and with very few exceptions, did not. I believe that on one level, Helen was intuiting that most of these people were not really interested in the course's message, and on another level, her almost antisocial behavior reflected her gradually increasing withdrawal from the world. Okay. So again, there's the ambivalence. Someone who is brilliant as she was bringing forth the course also had tremendous resistance, and I think that's reflected in a lot of her um, poetry and gifts from God. Her ambivalence with Jesus and with the course, and really just a reflection of seeing the cognitive dissonance and the battle and the opposition between the two thought systems in her mind that we all have, right? As we've been noting ever since picking up this book again. Do you want to read a little?
Sure. Yeah, it's just so interesting uh,
Mm-hmm.
that it
Yeah, it
seemed
it
like
really is.
Helen was withdrawing there, and
Yeah, yeah.
uh, it could have been something physical. Uh, could have been, there's so many reasons why, people change their behavior like that and
Right, right.
and withdraw from something that they
Yeah.
truly have a passion for.
Yeah.
But she
Well,
just did. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just saying, just thinking out loud is like, well, perhaps it was, the part of her mind that really resonated with the course, um, may not have had, felt any need to, necessarily proselytize or whatever. Um, and it might have, I don't know if Helen was an introvert, but it certainly does seem like she was circumspect and somewhat, um, you know, she considered who she was talking to and used her, I think, her intuition and logic to share appropriately what the course was saying, so that it would have the optimal effect, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think there's
it's
I think we all do that to a certain extent. I mean, I don't just walk up to casual people on a street corner and say, "Hey, have you heard of Course in Miracles?" And I mean, so there's, I think the discretion is not so much withholding, but just allowing ourselves to be guided to what to say or not to say in certain contexts.
well, yeah, and I think her opinion, which they all seem to hold for some bit of time, was that this was not for public consumption, that the course itself was out of the realm of most people,
Right.
and her whole idea that only a few people, they only needed to print a few because only a few people would really want,
Right.
is really kind of uh, saying, this is beyond what the normal person can understand.
Mhm.
So, it was almost like, bringing herself into uh, a lower realm of society by, getting involved in,
Yeah,
proselytizing
it
or
might have been
or
that. I don't know. Yeah.
sharing that, I mean,
Mm.
there could have been a lot of reasons, but, I don't
Yeah.
want to speculate too much.
I think we're probably speculating a bit,
Yeah.
but I think one thing we can generalize is that everybody has a part of their mind that is completely comfortable with total sharing, which is what the Holy Spirit is, but it's not sharing form, it's sharing content, which is that we're all innocent eternally, um, and we've never been limited by form. And then the other part that has all kinds of quirky things going on.
Yeah, and it's funny because uh, uh, if you really look at it, this course, anybody can understand it.
Uh-huh.
Not that everybody wants to, or
Exactly. There's the distinction. That's a crucial distinction. Yeah.
uh,
Kind of
as
like Judy's comment to Helen, yeah, don't you mean, you know, uh, I know it's true, but won't believe it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, because what would that say about me and my life and my motivation and everything I'm doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Basically, yeah, I need do nothing.
Right.
And as I saw the other day when Jesus says, I need do nothing except not to interfere, and not like interfere like it does, the word does say enter, INTER, but I saw it as enter, ENTER,
Yeah.
fear, FEAR. I need do nothing except not to interfere. And
Yeah.
so I think it's kind of a play on words, actually. Uh, that
I hadn't,
that in
that
there.
wordplay hadn't crossed my mind, but I can see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Dove also put, powered by discernment. I think, I think if we uh, listen to Holy Spirit's guidance, and asked to be shown and to look at our mind with Holy Spirit, we'll automatically do the kind thing on the level of form.
exactly,
When we learn to trust
exactly.
that consistently, and we don't have to think about, should I say this or not say that, or do this or not do that.
Yeah, if you have to think about it, that means don't do it. If I have to think
Usually, yeah,
about
if there's a lot of deliberation, that's probably a big clue, huh?
it, that's a big clue.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm trying to do something here. Okay. So that was to be our last trip together and basically marked a watershed in terms of Helen's own involvement with the course. After this, she pretty much continued to withdraw from contact with people who professed an interest in the three books. She did meet with people from time to time, but the larger meetings she left to Judy as well as to Bill, who began to identify more and more with Judy and her presentation of the course. So this is Bill becoming more involved with Judy and more involved in Judy's uh, expression and uh, use of the course.
Yep.
To
A little side note there, and Bill um, befriended Dr. Bob Rosenthal, who met Tam, who was a friend of Tam's, and so Bob met Judy in Judy's apartment in New York, and and I had several wonderful conversations with Bob Rosenthal, who just it was I think it was 3 years ago today that, or not today, but it was this last week that he passed, something like that. Anyway, somebody brought that up in another meeting this week, and so Bill basically became very close with Dr. Bob Rosenthal, and that's I think why Dr. Bob really resonated with the course and used that in his psychoanalytic practice for many years, including dissociative identity disorder or split personality disorder, multiple personality disorder patients. And this came up the other day, and it's like, well, we're all having a multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder experience because we think there's multiple people in the world. I mean, what we call humanity is really one colossal dissociative identity disorder, and we just call it life.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
I'm going to. We're getting close to the end of our time,
yeah.
so I am going to try to find that little song.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
let's see.
Should I read one more paragraph while you're doing that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll take us to the bottom of page 377. To compound what was already a worsening situation, Helen was forced by Columbia Presbyterian's mandatory retirement policy to leave the medical center. Helen had turned 65 in 1974 and was required to retire. However, because Helen's birthday fell in July, Bill was able to negotiate for another year for her to remain on as an official member of the department. And then for an additional 2 years, Helen continued as a volunteer consultant, which allowed her to go to the medical center every day as before. But finally, somewhere in the middle of 1977, the inevitable occurred and Helen left Columbia Presbyterian never to return again. A year later, Bill retired, and sometime after that moved permanently to California. Well, that seems like a good stopping point for today.
That's a good stopping point.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to hear, let me bring this back to the beginning. All right.
I am an alien, my rocket ship is human bone and skin. I'm something smaller staring out the skull with a panel of wire and buttons I don't understand. Spamming everyone around. So does being human mean pretending to know what's going on? What's going on?
That's it.
That's cute. That's cute. Can you put the link to that in the chat? I'd like to share that.
I will. And there are
Thanks.
several different, there, a lot of people have done animations to this. It's
Uh-huh.
really cute.
Oh, that's
Uh,
fun. That's fun.
because the girl who made it is just adorable and it's just yeah, I'm an alien and I'm spending all my time spamming everything,
Yeah.
but being human means pretending to know what's going on.
I- That somehow
Anyway,
that reminds me in my creative writing class in high school, I wrote a paper about basically like an astronaut donning a spacesuit, and that's how you read it, but then you realize it's just another routine childbirth. When the umbilical is cut, it's like the spacewalk kind of thing. The cable has been loosened.
yep,
Yeah,
and there we are.
and
Where
there we
am
are.
I?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, a friend of mine who I shared it with, she made a very cute cartoon of an astronaut. It was a bit befuddled to discover there was someone else in the helmet. It was pretty funny. I
Oh
don't know what
my
happened to
God.
that paper or that drawing, but I'd love to find that someday. It was just kind of
It's
fun.
in your mind
It's in my
where it
mind,
all
exactly. Yeah.
oh,
Well, anyway, thank you. I'm going to leave a few minutes early just so I can take a break. But thank
collect
you, Lynn, as
yourself for your
always. And I am savoring as every week our reading and time together, and look forward to the next week. So,
all right. Thank you so much, Bruce
yeah.
Rawls. And there's Dove. Hi, sweetie. All
Hey,
right.
hey, Dove. Great to see you. Have a great week, all.
All right. Love you.